Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. Imagine, if you will, a football player who has a tremendous game. He runs the ball for 200 yards. He catches the ball for gains for another 100 yards. He scores touchdowns over and over, and when the ball was fumbled by another player, he recovered the fumble. This player was riding high, and yet in the end, his team lost the game. All his heroics counted for nothing. This week we are looking at some times in the Bible when cold weather is part of the story, and today is a little different from the other days of this week. Our passage is from 2 Corinthians 11:27, and it comes in the middle of a dispute Paul is having with some of his detractors. Let me remind you that when we read the letters of Paul, we are reading someone else's mail. He wrote this letter to the church at Corinth, and he was addressing certain issues or problems that had come up in the church. I'll also remind you that Paul would visit a city, establish a church there, and then move on to other cities to do the same thing. What often happened is that problems arose back in those churches he had established, and Paul would have to write back to straighten things out. One issue seemed to come up over and over. After Paul was gone, others sought power in the church and so began to teach things not in accord with what Paul taught about Jesus, or to try to make themselves look better by making Paul look bad. They would say that he wasn't really an apostle, perhaps, or they would boast about all they had given up for Jesus and how Paul had not. So when we come to this part of 2 Corinthians, Paul is addressing just such a situation. Someone has been running him down and trying to lift themselves up, and so Paul runs through a list of the things following Christ has cost him. He talks about being beaten and flogged and stoned. He talks about being lost at sea and crossing dangerous rivers. He talks about being in prison and in danger from his own people and from enemies. Then toward the end of the list, he adds verse 27. In toil and hardship, through many a sleepless night, hungry and thirsty, often without food, cold and naked. It might not have been cold when Paul wrote the letter, but he certainly describes times when he was cold and without adequate clothing to keep warm, all in service to the spread of the gospel. And so in some ways, our final story for this week might point to the cost of discipleship. Sometimes the way of the cross is a way of suffering and trouble. But what Paul knew and what we know is that we don't walk that path alone. God is with us. Let me make clear that when Paul goes through this list of all that he has suffered for the sake of Christ, he doesn't list them to imply he is better than whoever he is criticizing him. No, he lists them to say, if I wanted to prove I've been through more than they have, I could. But none of that is important at all next to what Jesus has done for us. That's Paul's point. Like that football player, his own personal accomplishments or sufferings don't really matter. The point is victory. And for Paul, victory means faith in Jesus. He doesn't boast in his sufferings. He boasts in the victory of Christ. It's not about who is better or suffered more. It's about what Jesus does to save us. And so Paul tells them if this person is lifting himself up, then he should be ignored. The only one who should be lifted up is Jesus. Warm or cold, may our lives do just that. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.